Hello, and welcome to Minnesota Home Ownership Center's Welcome Home podcast. My name is Bill Gray, and today we're featuring another group we partner closely with in our work to advance equitable home ownership. That's the Asian Real Estate Association of America, or AREAA's Twin Cities chapter. Joining me are AREAA Twin Cities Advisory Board member and Movement Mortgage market leader, Ricky Cheath. Welcome, Ricky. And we also have AREAA member and realtor with Sound Home Group here in the Twin Cities, Tasha Soundara. Welcome, Tasha.
Thank you, Bill.
Did I say your name right?
You did.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's start by taking a look at AREAA and the very active Twin Cities chapter that we're lucky to have here. Ricky, tell us a little bit about why AREAA exists and what it's trying to do here in the Twin Cities.
Well, that's a great question. So AREAA Twin Cities, we are a smaller branch of a more national organization. AREAA National is comprised of 18,000 members through 45 different chapters all across the United States. Most recent is the Milwaukee chapter that opened up. In the Asian American community, we have a very uniqueness in our culture in the fact that there are several different cultures that make the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Right. So what AREAA does is we want to be the trusted resource within all the different Asian cultures because there's Cambodian, there's Vietnamese, there's Hmong, and within each culture there are different disparities and different languages. So what AREAA does is we want to combine all the different cultures into one, so that way you can come to us, any member of AREAA, and then we can guide you through homeownership.
Okay, I get it. How about you, Tasha? Why do you feel like it's important that you participate in AREAA and be a member?
So I've been involved in AREAA last decade here on the national level and also the local level, just different capacities. And, I've been involved in some of their national levels as far as like their groups as far like Asian cultural centers, and then here when the board was starting, it helped form it as well.
Okay.
And what I love about the organization is what Ricky had said, where we comprise of a lot of different culture groups, but what we also do is collaborate. So we collaborate with NAREAA, so other organizations out there, which just lends to like a bigger, powerful voice. So when you're going out there and want to influence the community, it's always nice to be able to lock arms with other organizations.
Yeah.
And so that's what I love is collaborating. Because collaboration is what is key to make sure that our voices are heard.
Yeah, and it's cool. We're lucky here in the Twin Cities to have a very active, environment for this. You mentioned NAREP, that's the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. NARAB is the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, the Black Real Estate Group. I think there's one. There's the Alliance, which is for the gay, lesbian, and that. And we were lucky enough to have all four of you come together and put on a home ownership opportunities fair in April, and that was really cool to be a part of. So yeah, we're lucky here in the cities for that. I thought what we could do next is take a look at some state-specific stats pertaining to the Asian community here in Minnesota, and maybe see where that leads us. So I did some research. Population-wise, there are about 307,000 state residents that identify as ethnically Asian in Minnesota here. That's just 5.4% of our total population of 5.7 million. It's the smallest ethnic share of our total population here, save for American Indian. 85% of Minnesota Asians live in the Twin Cities metro, so that that changes the numbers even more. And more than half of Minnesota Asians are foreign born, which I also thought was interesting. When it comes to home ownership, Minnesota Asians have an ownership rate of 66.1%. This compares to an overall statewide rate of 73%, and it's the highest ethnic ownership rate, save for white non-Hispanic. It's also higher than the national Asian American home ownership rate, which is 62.8%. So one last thing, if we look at income and spending on housing, Minnesota's Asian population has the highest median income stat of any ethnic group, coming in at nearly $94,000 annually. The statewide median is about $82K. But 11.8% of Asian Minnesotans live below the poverty line, and 1 in 4 are cost burdened, meaning that they're spending more than 30% of their income on housing. So some really interesting back and forth numbers there. Let's talk about how they play out in the real world housing market. Tasha, Ricky, what in these numbers ring true to you in your work as real estate professionals? Either one of you can feel free to jump in.
So, I mean, I could start as far as, those are some pretty impressive numbers. Like basically was that 3 out of 5 people who are Asians out there are homeowners. So it's impressive. But if you look at it further, as far as ethnic groups, Ricky mentioned earlier, within the Asian community, there's a lot of different culture groups, ethnic groups. So you want to take a deeper dive into figuring out, okay, is there disparities in that? Because then that doesn't even out.
Right.
And so we look at that. We got to look at the history of where the Asian population came from. Same as the rest of the country, a lot of the Asians have started with, like, what is it, the Chinese, the Filipinos, and Japanese when they came here, a long time ago. And then it wasn't until the 70s when a lot of the Southeast Asians came after the war. That was the Vietnamese, the Cambodians, the Laotians, and the Hmong community. So a lot of those came during the 70s, and then afterwards there was other ethnic groups as well that followed suit. And a lot of them were from, like, war-torn countries.
Right.
A lot of times they had disputes with the government, so they came here as asylums to come here to America for a better life. So we look at that and look at the history and figure out, okay, because they came at different times of history in in Minnesota there, how does that all apply to that stat? And what I think about is where a lot of times it goes back to how they were taught back in their country. Because if we look at now right now, the Hmong population, the Laotian community, we came here, one of the last groups that were here.
Right.
We still back at home, we don't understand the credit systems.
Right.
So when we come here, we're still doing the same as what we did before.
Okay.
And that's important. And Ricky will talk more probably about the lending side of it. But as far as getting credit, you're not going to be able to get become a homeowner if you don't have that credit part down.
Right.
And so that's lacking in some of that Asian communities.
So they might just be earlier in the process compared to some of the groups that have been here for longer and have gotten more established.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And that goes back to, I'd say, like generational wealth, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the people who've been here, especially the Caucasian community who's been here for generations, that generation wealth plays a huge part in home ownership.
Right.
Number one thing, you need down payment.
Yep.
And if you don't have it, you're not going to be able to buy it.
Right.
And if you don't know the difference between a 3% down and a 20% down,
right.
Education is key.
And an interest rate and what that means and how it impacts your buying power. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, back to like the history.
Yeah. And this is a good time to remind folks that that's what the home ownership center does too. They can hook you up with a home ownership advisor who can walk you through this stuff and help you to understand it so that you can leverage home ownership for yourself. So that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that before. Reading those numbers is like really good home ownership rate and also kind of a high cost burden rate, and how do these things go together? I think I understand it a little better now. So thanks for that. Ricky, let's talk specifically about, the credit system and I know it's not how it's done other places, and trying to figure out what your debt to income ratio is and what the interest rate's going to mean for your mortgage and all that. What do you see as kind of some of the different thinking or different situations that folks might find themselves in?
Yeah, so you mentioned a lot of different stats that are pretty telling. One of the stats being the fact that out of all the minorities, the different trades, different trade organizations, Asian American falls second behind Caucasian. And although we have a very unique barrier such as language and different cultures, I personally believe one of the reasons behind that statistic with any race, or culture is just access to quality education.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're looking at purchasing a home or whether you look at, starting a business, having access to quality education to give you that foundation of knowledge that you need in order to navigate the Western society.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, Tasha, you mentioned earlier, like understanding credit. What do we know about education today as it sits right now? A lot of schools, they don't have financial literacy as part of their education.
Right.
Certain schools are now starting to do that. Other schools will have clubs, and then speakers like myself and other people will come in and
that's
then,
cool.
Talk about financial literacy on a volunteer basis. So then if the schools don't have that as a natural education process, then where do we get that?
Right.
Right. The second step then would be obviously your home. Like who is your inside influence? And a lot of the times it's parents, obviously, it's siblings, it's aunt and uncles, it's friends. But when you're talking about like what Tasha mentioned earlier in terms of, the different ethnic groups, the different cultures moving to Minnesota because of war-torn countries or whatever the reason was. I myself came in the late 70s, early 80s with the rest of the Cambodians. And we were lucky enough to be sponsored by a church in Janesville, Minnesota, and then they taught my parents, the different cultural differences here in the United States, such as credit, and then that got passed down to me.
Very good. Okay.
So because my parents had a good support system, someone that actually knew what they were talking about, they then were able to pass that, knowledge on to myself, and then I'll pass that on to my children. And that's, another way of creating generational wealth is through knowledge transfer.
Yeah.
So I think that the knowledge transfer between our parents and those around us definitely help. It gets past that first hurdle of lack of education.
Yeah.
Since schools don't offer financial literacy as a whole.
Right.
And then once you get past that first step, right, it's then, what are the traditions at home, outside of schooling? Because I think if we want to bridge the disparity gap, it's got to start at the youngest age possible.
Right.
It's got to start with the mindset there. And in the Asian culture, education is extremely important. It's one of the pillars of success in the Asian culture. I know it's a stereotype, but if I came home with anything less than an A, I would get in trouble. So
would I. Just saying.
So it's one of those things that I push my kids towards. I make sure that they're financially educated at such a young age. My youngest daughter is only 11 years old, and we talk about credit, we talk about financial literacy, and one of her favorite subjects is math.
Nice.
Yeah.
So. Well, that's really cool. So I don't know if either one of you may know the answer to this. If I recall correctly, I do think they passed a legislative bill to establish financial literacy standards in education in high school, starting in 2024 or 5.
I thought it was 2025.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is coming, and that's great, but you're right. I mean, up to this point, they don't really cover it. That is one of the things that our advisors, help out with. Let's talk about this. Okay, so we've talked about this on other programs. There is $100 million in first generation down payment assistance coming to Minnesota next year. We don't know many of the program operational details yet, but it is coming. It sounds like, well, I'm not even going to say that. You tell me, do you see the Asian culture as maybe having an opportunity here for first generation home ownership that they should be, thinking about right now? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, do you think there's more first generation in the Asian community than the community at large, or some of the other ones?
Well, if you're just going off of statistics and numbers, statistically, since Asians rank second behind Caucasians in terms of percent of home ownership, the number of opportunity has dwindled.
This is where your daughter gets her math skills.
So the number of opportunity is dwindled compared to the other minority groups.
Right.
With that being said, there is a massive population of Asian American Pacific Islanders in the Twin Cities. And there's plenty of families out there that could, in fact, own a home but don't know where to go. And so for that reason, yes, I do believe that there is opportunity there for the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Is it as great as the other ethnic groups? Probably not, just due to statistics.
And there's other down payment programs out there. One of the things that we've been talking about is the growing importance of down payment assistance as these interest rates have risen and will likely come down, but probably not to the level that we saw them a couple years ago and for so long before that. So down payment assistance can sometimes make that difference. So I guess I'll leave that there. Bottom line, there is all sorts of help, all sorts of resources, all sorts of new things coming online. It's time to think. It's a good time to give homeownership a second thought if you kind of dismissed it as out of your reach previously. So, anyways, anything else that you think we should talk about under this topic umbrella before we go? And it's fine if not.
I would say the kind of the topic of unconscious bias when you're talking about being a first generation homeowner, and what that means in a household that have been primarily renters, right? Because that's exactly what that is. If you're a first generation homeowner,
right?
Your parents and your grandparents and grandparents' parents never owned home,
right?
So what does that mean in someone's state of mind? And then how do we overcome that as professionals on both the lending and real estate side? Because we have to break down the unconscious bias that a parent or a grandparent or a great grandparent instilled in us of, hey, owning a home isn't meant for us, right? So if that is the case, then how do we break that down? And then also, how do we also teach others who don't know various cultural differences within the Asian community when it comes to maybe purchasing certain homes? I mean, Tasha, remember us doing that video?
Yeah, we did.
That disparity video
a few
years ago. I don't know if you want to explain kind of what that was about, but we were trying to educate others how to deal with buyers within the home Asian American community.
So what we did, our AREAA Twin Cities organization a few years ago was break down some of those, like, I'd say, myths about the Asian community. And it was merely just to educate the professional community. Because a lot of times it's where, yes, we're educating the consumers out there, but it starts with our professionals first, because we're the ones needing to educate. And if we have some biases amongst ourselves here, how are we supposed to educate the consumer? And what we did was we did what was it, like a kind of a Saturday Night type of skit, just to loosen it up, so that way we can delve right into some of those stereotypes that the Asian community have. And one of the examples that a lot of people give is where, what is it, the cash? Everybody has cash, but cash in the bank is what's key. Cash under the mattress doesn't work in the lending world.
Right.
So those kind of things. And also there's a lot of superstitions. The Asian Eastern community, a lot of them have different superstitions as far as numbers or where the house placement is. And if you're not aware of that as a professional, then how are you supposed to navigate them and help them buy the house? And having those conversations up front is going to be key, or else you might give up on them. And that, and that's what frustrates a lot of professionals, is where I don't understand this community. I'll move on. And then us as a community gets left behind if we're not able to really guide them and help them.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you're trying to do something about it. Well, that's great. I think this has been a great conversation. Thanks to both of you guys. I think that'll do it for this episode. If you're interested in exploring home ownership for your own household, we've said it here before, you can take a home buying class and enlist the help of a home ownership advisor for free by going to our website, hocmn.org. Our advisors and educators are embedded in organizations across the state, and they will work with you to help get you mortgage ready, educate you on the buying process from A to Z, and walk you through every step of the process. I want to thank our guests today, Tasha and Ricky. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it. As always, I want to acknowledge our sponsors, Associated Bank, Midwest One Bank, Bremer Bank, and Old National Bank. Our sincere thanks to each of these organizations for their support. Thanks, and see you next time.